How can Buddha say so much just sitting there and being quiet? It appears as if Buddha is just meditating, but in fact, he's communicating, and he is saying a lot. So let's explain Buddha simply. Buddhist lessons are often difficult to communicate because Buddhists were very methodical in their writing and their exploration of ideas, which means their lessons are commonly like a long train of thoughts. However, each cart individually can usually be explained and understood rather simply. Buddhists understood this, as well as the fact that they needed to find a way to communicate to the layperson, those who were uneducated or illiterate, mindful thousands of years ago that this was much of the population. To accomplish this, Buddhists became prolific and efficient visual communicators, and this image is a great example because it communicates a lot. First, this image communicates that it is not actually Buddha. Then, it defines that this is a particular moment in time, and even though there's no background, the image establishes a place, as well as the fact that he's not alone, because the Mother Earth Goddess is present. Additionally, this image is communicating what the future holds, and that an epic battle was just won that will literally change the world. But how does this single image say all of this? To begin with, this is not Buddha yet. At this point in time, this is simply a man named Siddhartha Gautama. Once Siddhartha attains Nibbana, he becomes Buddha. Buddha is actually his state of being, though, not necessarily a name, and there's more than one Buddha. However, this image tells us he's about to be Buddha. But how do we know this? Most Buddha images communicate a moment or an idea through Buddha's hand gestures, called a mudra. This mudra, called the Burmese Sparsha mudra, involves his left hand being on his lap and his right hand reaching out to touch the earth. Some mudras may be general, like a mudra that signifies Buddha is teaching, but this mudra says a lot. Prior to this point in time, Siddhartha had been on a long and difficult path, which involved him leaving his luxurious life as a prince to become an ascetic, barely eating or drinking, until he became extremely emaciated. Siddhartha's entire quest revolved around wanting to understand why people suffer. On this long path, Siddhartha meditated constantly, ceaselessly, but this meditation is different. This time, he sits down under a Bodhi tree and becomes determined. This day, Siddhartha decides that he will meditate and not move until he finally understands the answer to the question of why we suffer. However, as Siddhartha is meditating, he's confronted by Mara, and a massive battle ensues. Mara, also called the Tempter, Evil One, and many other names, is opposed to him finding the answer to this question because it will lead to him becoming enlightened and thus escaping from Mara's dominion. So, Mara's army launches flaming arrows at Siddhartha, but as the arrows approach, they simply turn to lotus petals and blow away. Mara then tempts him by offering him great power, everything his father wanted him to have, if he simply abandons his path. But Siddhartha is unmoved. More battles ensue and more battles fail. Mara, sensing defeat, gets desperate and sends his 3 daughters to tempt him by dancing naked in front of the Buddha-to-be and making advances. All to distract Siddhartha, but all to no avail. At face value, all of this may sound fanciful, but explained simply, it makes a lot more sense that imagery is being used to illustrate ideas. For example, the battle with Mara didn't occur physically on a battlefield, it occurred mentally. You could say that Siddhartha was battling the demons inside his head. The war Mara waged is simply metaphors for the trials and tribulations Siddhartha had to face so far on his path. Mara's daughters are actually personified as thirst, discontentment, and desire. All these battles are things that have prevented Siddhartha from becoming enlightened. However, in a sense, Mara is very real, but also, oddly, just a mental manifestation of internal conflict. In reality, and as a metaphor, Mara maintains control of all humans by keeping them ignorant, and this is changing for Siddhartha. So, as a last-ditch effort, Mara berates Siddhartha and demands to know why he thinks he deserves Nibbana, and who can actually testify that he's done enough good deeds to gain enough merit to become enlightened. Buddha replies, simply by touching the earth. This is how we know at this moment the Mother Earth Goddess is present, even if she's not in the image. Because Siddhartha, touching the earth indicates that he has called upon the Mother Earth Goddess to testify for him. And she replied by simply wringing out her long, wet hair. The massive amount of water that came rushing out of her hair obliterated and washed Mara and his armies away, thus concluding the battle. And so this moment in time is known as the defeat of Mara, and is the reason many Buddha sculptures have been created with this mudra. This also tells us Siddhartha is not quite Buddha, but in the following hours will be. However, to accomplish this, Siddhartha must transcend samsara, which will be covered in the next video. But first, what do you think the meaning was of the Mother Earth Goddess wringing out her wet hair to wash away Mara's armies? I'm about to answer, but first, like this video, subscribe, and please watch these other short videos which help explain how these Buddhist ideas and others that will be covered have inspired my art, Buddha Elemental, and a quest to create 5 Buddha sculptures unlike any other. I'll even be giving away part of this art to my subscribers. In the next video, we'll pick up from here, and I'll explain how all my sculptures, and one in particular, are inspired by samsara, as well as why samsara is a fascinating topic on several levels, which have inspired artists, writers, philosophers, scientists, and many others. So, the sheer volume of water that flooded out of the goddess's hair and washed away Mara's armies indicated a victory for Siddhartha. But what this action communicates is an answer to Mara. The goddess answered Mara's question as to who can attest to Siddhartha's great deeds, as well as why he is worthy of Nibbana. Because the massive volume of water that flooded from her hair is a metaphor for the volume of good deeds Siddhartha had committed along his path to become Buddha. Learn more at Buddha Elemental.